Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Hello everybody. Welcome to the Chris and Andre Show. We've been on somewhat of a unwanted hiatus.
I would like to think of it as a sabbatical.
Yeah. This is
a forced sabbatical.
This is episode.
We worked with somebody that went on a forced sabbatical once.
Yeah. It was a volunteer sabbatical. It's kind of
it was an involuntary sabbatical. It was, you're taking a sabbatical or you don't have a job here anymore.
Yeah. I get myself in trouble. But this is episode 71, the long-awaited episode 71. We've had a lot of life going on, yeah?
Yeah, I think you could say that. We were just mentioning earlier that it's been at least roughly a month since we recorded, 3 or 4 weeks since we recorded an episode. All this guy's fault. And it's been almost 2 months since we published an episode. Also, it's all this guy's fault. But as Andre points out, there has been a lot of stuff going on. As you will find out once those old episodes are finally published, I moved over the last month or so down to Carolina Beach. So I am living here full time. As of this past Friday, I officially closed on my house in Cary. So
Yay.
That was, yeah. It was one of those things where it was like, there was nothing that seemed to be going wrong, but that almost had me more worried. It was like everything seemed too easy, and it's like,
right.
This is, it's going to turn out that these people aren't who they say they are. And, it's like, you're
That's
on
funny.
candid camera, but no, like everything went off without a hitch. So, sold my first house, did it all by myself, kind of.
Cool.
But yeah, so then obviously with that, I had to somehow still, even though I've been, working on like boxing stuff up and moving for a couple of months now, scramble to get the last of the things out. Namely, I forgot that I had an attic that still had stuff in it. I thought I had taken most of the stuff out of there. There wasn't a ton because we didn't put like the Halloween and Christmas stuff back up there earlier this year.
Right.
But there was a few things that I had to go through. And, of course, I remembered at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's 120 degrees up there. But what I kept telling myself is, like people in Norway would pay money to be in a sauna like this. So
it's not altogether true because when I was a kid, I lived in Norway, and in the summer, we had a room in the attic.
Yeah.
And it was really dope. I mean, that was my spot. And it was quite comfortable because for whatever reason. But saunas are great.
Yeah.
There was across from the school that I went to, there was a sports club. And it had bowling, like a ski lodge, because you would start a cross-country trip from there a lot of the times.
Sure.
Had a sauna. It was great. Pool. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, so getting all of that stuff figured out, I had an upright piano that I was intending to bring with me. That ended up staying. I left it with the new buyers. They said that they would take it. I had my pool table.
Yeah.
This is how you know that you have like a real best friend, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday afternoon at like 3 o'clock, and my dad and I, who have been working on getting everything boxed up and packed and ready, and like I had taken the pool table apart as far as I could get it, but this was an antique, quote unquote, pool table from like the 1950s. It's 9 foot long with 3 pieces of slate that weigh roughly 300 to 400 pounds each, right? At least,
give or take. Yeah.
Give or take.
That's like the light estimate,
right? It's probably closer to 500 pounds. But yeah, so these things are no joke, and we realize that the two of us, no matter how we try to figure it out, are not going to be able to get a single piece of slate into the back of the truck, by ourselves. And so I text Andre and I'm like, I know at my age I'm not supposed to ask my friends to help me move.
You're a grown man.
Yeah, I should just pay people to do this, but we could really use some help with these pieces of slate. Would you be available later? And no question, just within 2 minutes, I got the text back, yeah, I'll be there at 5:30. And sure enough, 5:30, he's there. We pick up the first piece, we get it in the truck, and he's like, you did not tell me just how heavy these were.
Yeah, they were kind of they were up there. And I didn't tell you either. My family knows I ruined my shoulders. And I'm still trying to do some, I guess, natural rehabilitation because I was doing lat pulls and I can't quickly lift my shoulder up or I writhe in pain. It's really sad.
Well, fortunately, these pieces of slate weren't going up quickly.
Because I would have been like, dude, you got to call those college kids that can do this.
No, we had to, we just unloaded them yesterday, I think it was. Yeah. At the house here. And we got our buddy Matt to help, load those. And
Good.
So Matt, I'm just guessing here. If he listens, Matt, I'm really sorry if I get this wrong, just in terms of your general age range. But I would say Matt's probably late 40s, early 50s, somewhere in that range.
Right.
My dad.
Don't look at my.
What?
There's
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not. No. Here's
That's
the
not
point.
a big
right?
leap.
The same thing happened when you were there, though. Okay, I'm 37. I'm not super strong or anything like that, but I can lift stuff, and I end up just standing around taking the easy piece that nobody else is I don't know. With them, they had the ends and were grab the middle, and I'm like, grab the middle? How am I supposed to grab the middle of this thing? And so, yeah, I just felt like I was doing absolutely nothing. And my dad and Matt are just having to bear the brunt of this gigantic piece of slate. But at the end of the day,
it's really a 2-man job, but it's got weight intimidation. If I'm being honest.
No, really, I think it's a 4-person job is what it is. You need, especially the way that we were, because then what we were doing was loading them flat. Right, laying them flat on a couple of dollies and stacking the 3 on top of each other so we could slide them. Yeah, I know, not the best, but they have the wood in between. Yeah, stop it.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Life.
All right, I'm done talking.
Yeah, we're
about
done
that.
with this conversation.
So I want to talk about my stupid injury.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you start to get old man strong. I'm in the gym and I'm doing lat pulls. And I normally do sets of 3, and with lat pulls I try to do 3, 6, 9 for whatever reason. That number makes sense for me.
Damn girl,
as
fine.
opposed to yeah. In my head, and I'm in the middle of the second set, and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. But I keep going. I do the 3rd set. I'm like, and I leave the gym. And I'm making breakfast. I'm like, this feels kind of off. I'm thinking, well, why was I lifting 180 pounds? I'm never gonna physically pull something. I can't even. I'm afraid to lift this arm too far. My right arm I can. I'm never gonna pull something like this. Even a pull up, you use a different group of muscles. And I go to bed that night, and I normally sleep on my side, but I've since trained myself not to. Bro, I wake up. First of all, I couldn't sleep. I was just about to cry. I was like, this hurts so bad. Yeah. And I know I've ripped. I've probably tore and ripped ligaments and whatever muscle connections I have throughout my shoulder down into my bicep. Because it's and I've had that happen before when I was a kid, where I was doing too much on the weight bench. But good night. You don't recover. Your body does not recover at 44. It's just
no. I mean, your body doesn't recover after 30. 30,
Yeah.
20, there's all of these like drop-offs, right? I think 25, you get that initial, and it's not as steep, but then like 30 is a pretty big hit. Like,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, after you turn 30, like, your body is just like, dude, who do you think you are? You know?
Yeah, what are you thinking?
What are you doing? Yeah, I mean, at 37, you know, like, I'm trying to think. I've done some stupid stuff. Like, I tripped and fell walking. Yeah. And, like, somehow managed to injure my toe enough that it was, like, really bothering me for a couple of months. You know?
Right.
Like, I had to, like, hobble on it a significant amount. And that was annoying, but...
Yeah, it's bad. I mean,
when I slipped and fell down the stairs...
Well, when I was in New York, I actually was at my cousin's house, and I was carrying a cooler. And she has a step that goes... There's a small, like, 4-inch riser. And I saw it. I'm like, okay, I got it. And I forgot about the clearance. Yeah. I'm like, son of a... And so I trip, and I'm holding the cooler like this. And I'm like, I'm not going to fall like a clown and drop this cooler. And somehow, I don't... Well, I know, because I'm Spider-Man. I don't fall. And this dude's like, yo, my man, you good? I'm like, yeah. And I'm just like, yo, if I would have fell, there's no coming back from that.
That might have been it.
Coming back from it. Yeah, I would have just gone back to the hotel. Oh, while we're here, let's talk about legalizing marijuana.
Oh, okay.
We don't have anything for that in the media board, but
nope.
I'll tell you what.
I'm sure I could find.
Let's find something like that. Ooh,
what do you got?
I'll wait.
Here,
That's more like a boo all the way around. So we're in New York.
It depends on which side of this argument you stand on, Andre.
Well, to be fair, my youngest son, who is on the side of the argument that would agree with like most people that are pro, like he saw some of my points. So I'm going to say this. First of all, I will start going to New York once a year because I really miss being there. It's great. I love, like, there's something about New York for me. It's just like, well, it's home, number one, but I just love being there. So we're in Queens, and well, that doesn't matter because it was everywhere we went in New York, like it's bananas. So they decriminalized marijuana, so people can from sell to smoke wherever they want, and there's no chance of getting arrested. I saw people literally selling weed in front of cops. It was freaking nuts. I was like, this is like a flashback to the 80s of people just like drinking in front of cops, and like when, you know, Times Square was a nightmare and you probably would never go there. So, you know, talking to my son, I'm like, hey, so this is what I'm afraid of. And it's not that I don't care one way or the other, but when you look at different parts of the city, right? So we went to Manhattan. We stayed a lot of time in Queens. We were also in Harlem. And it's it's different. So in Midtown, so we went to Wall Street because I wanted to show my daughter Wall Street because that's, you know, it's the one of the temples to American pride. By the way, there was a 2-hour wait to take a picture in front of the Wall Street Bull. It was insane. The line went down like a block. It made no sense at all.
Yep.
I'm like, well, that's our arrogance right there. Like, and people come here and they want to see how arrogant we are. But we're walking through like the financial district, and there's a row. There's like a probably block or so where you have hotels, and only one person. No, as we're walking towards Battery Park, like somebody asked us. They're like sitting outside, like literally on the stoop, and like, yo, my man, you want to buy this? You know, I was wearing my Kaepernick shirt. He's like, yo, Cap. He's trying to like, you know, blow his little pitch. I'm like, all right, it's cool. But when I was in Queens, it was every corner. There's like a squad of like 10, 15 kids out there, just like, you know, selling nickels, selling dimes, selling, J's by the pass, or selling blunts by the pass. I'm like, what are we doing? And there's cops in front of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when we're in Harlem, the same thing. When we get off the subway, same thing. And ironically, when you're in Manhattan, and especially like in Midtown, you don't see that. So it proves my point. In the higher rent district, you're not going to have the same. I mean, you can probably get away with that. You can probably legalize or decriminalize. You're not going to see like a free for all, right? But outside of that, it's just like a plethora of, what are we doing, guys? We saw this chick, like, maybe she was drunk, maybe she was high, I don't know. We're like coming back from Harlem. We took the subway, which that's a whole other thing. That's like a whole podcast.
Yeah.
And she's like laid out on the ground, passed out, like looks like she was dead. She could have been dead. I don't know. We didn't stop long enough to find out. But I'm like, yo. And so I asked my son, I'm like, so do you see what I'm saying? Like when you, actually before that, we were, my aunt in Harlem, she like cooked some food. It was lovely. A lot of it was meat. I couldn't eat it. I didn't tell her that, but I love being home. And I made a comment in front of one of my cousins, and I'm like, look, in the suburbs, people are like, they're like, pass it, it'll be great, blah, blah, blah. But you probably have the resources to have rehab centers or addiction centers and stuff like that. And one of my cousins, she says, yeah, we have them everywhere. We have like every other block there's a rehab center, but they're all shit. So it's like, unless you put the resources in place, because there's going to be probably more people than not that become addicted, and those areas probably see more of the gateway drug, and like, that's no lie. You destroy a whole community. In the suburbs, you don't see that problem. In Midtown, you don't, like Lower Manhattan and places like that, you don't really see that problem. And that's what people are so blind to that, and it's a stupid argument. And I was telling my son, I'm like, hey, so I said, babe, look up the laws on this since it's decriminalized. And he looked it up. He was like, yo, Dad, that's not the best way to do this, because from what he saw my point of view. It's like, yeah, that's great for the burbs. It's great for people with money, but everybody else, they're going to suffer. And he saw the suffering. He saw the disjointed, like, mixing of people that aren't, trying to get high or I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, like, yo, it turns your whole neighborhood into something it shouldn't be. You see what I'm saying? Now, I know I just threw it a lot.
No,
but it was just a crazy experience for me. I'm like, I would love to take my experience as somebody that's not saying you shouldn't have the right to do it, because I know the arguments, well, you can drink a beer. Sure. I don't want to get into that. Look what it does to communities that don't have the resources, or they're not properly funded, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, I do see what you're saying, and I think, if I understand correctly, your issue is more with the way that they've gone about it with decriminalization, as opposed to putting in place like laws to help regulate it in any way, shape, or form. Not saying that you'd necessarily be in favor of that, but it sounds like the larger issue is that, it's just kind of like a free-for-all out there, and there's nothing to really rein in, and so what you end up with is, like a bunch of kids selling stuff on corners, all over some neighborhoods, and then you have fancy, like weed vans, right, that are rolling up in the suburbs and stuff like that.
We saw a dope weed van right outside of Battery Park, man. It was like a food truck. Yeah. I was like, I should have took a picture of it, but it was like, this is what we're doing?
Well, the theory is that that's not real weed, that they're selling like fake weed out of it. But yeah, I'm with you in that, like, I think, just basically saying like, well, we're not going to put any rules in place on it, but we're also not going to enforce any of the existing rules that are on the books when it comes to this one particular substance just does not make sense. Like, I think if you want to look at making marijuana, in the same realm, or in terms of like its legalized status in the country as like alcohol and tobacco, like that's a completely different thing, right? Like because I do believe that like if you're going to legalize it, there need to be rules and regulations in terms of who, at what age you can access it, just like there is with alcohol and tobacco. Like it's not something
I'm okay with that
doing.
age.
Like here's a THC lollipop, 6-year-old,
Right.
like. Go chill out and watch some Scooby Doo, like.
But I am a proponent of a bag of Doritos because you're gonna want that next. Right? And I'm okay with even making those ages 18 because I do firmly believe that if you're old enough to die for your country, you should be able to drink a beer. And if you're gonna
well, at this point, it's 21 everywhere for both alcohol and tobacco,
and that's ridiculous.
I mean, I don't disagree. Like but. That it seems like we're going the opposite direction in this country, like I have often felt that it seems like a very arbitrary age, 21, when everything else you basically have the legal right to do. Yeah, when you're except for rent a car. you can rent a car. It just costs you an arm and a leg if you're under 25.
Yeah,
but yeah, like it's just. All of those things that like I can agree to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition loans, but I can't buy a beer. I can't smoke a cigarette. Like I'm with you on that. And yeah, like I think the other thing that we're seeing, right, is that there's been, as this push for decriminalization and legalization in certain states has happened, there's been this push for like stronger and more potent forms, right? Whether it's like the dab wax or just like stronger hybrid strains and stuff like that, or the gummies. Like it's all about like, oh, you just got to get so messed up, and then, like again, not knowing what was up with that person, the woman that you saw sprawled out on the floor, but like those are the things. I mean, that even experienced smokers have had issues with some of that stuff where it's like, holy crap, like that's not what most people, I think, are really looking for in that case. There is maybe a small subsect that are just like, I want to get,
blazed,
completely obliterated. But, like I feel the same way with alcohol, right? Like, yeah, there are some people that want to go out there and just like, drink freaking diesel that's, 80 proof or whatever, 100 proof. And it's like, okay, yeah, goodbye, liver. But, like I like having a beer every now and then, like we shouldn't outlaw alcohol because some people can't control themselves. And
I always have this argument. People say, well, you drink beer. I'm like, look, I only drink beer. I don't drink liquor, and I drink beers that are typically like casual beers. Like I'm not drinking like 8.5 IPAs every day, right? I'm drinking like an off the shelf. It's kind of like me and coffee. Like I enjoy the taste of coffee. Don't put cream and sugar in my coffee. I just want to enjoy my coffee.
No, you gotta have that oat, silk oat, vanilla, French vanilla creamer. It's the absolute best.
Jesus, no, I don't have time for that.
That's all you have to do. You just pour it, and you don't have time. I don't have time to pour something extra into my coffee. I'm busy, Andre. Must get to work.
Yeah. The same thing. It's true. The same thing with my beer. I don't want to regulate. Like I can drink 6. For example, one of my go-tos, like a casual beer, is Rolling Rock. Right.
Yeah.
I can probably drink 6 to 8 Rolling Rocks, and do a cartwheel and everything else.
Now, to be clear, the black coffee you've been drinking for years has clearly, obviously, obliterated your taste buds. So it doesn't matter what your beer tastes like. That's why you drink
You're
Rolling
probably
Rock.
Right. You're probably right.
I'll be honest. I don't even know if I've ever drank Rolling Rock, but it was always one of those beers in like college where it was like, ew, Rolling Rock. Like, it's in a green bottle.
No, Busch Light is a terrible beer.
Yeah, Busch Light is garbage. I mean, I'm a Corona guy. Like, I drink a lot of Corona. My parents have been big Corona drinkers for a long time. My mom always has Corona Light in her office here. Modelo, you and me, we're Modelo guys.
Yeah. And that's for me, that's a casual beer.
Yeah,
I can drink probably 6. Yeah, I can drink 6 or 8 Rolling Rocks. I can drink probably 4 or 5 Yinglings.
Yeah,
and
Yingling, that's on my list.
Yeah, I don't go out and say, well, I've got to go and get like the strongest IPA I can find today. I'll drink an IPA when I go out, like to dinner or something like that, but I'll have like one or two because
you
I
can
know
keep
that
your
I'm.
crappy beers to yourself. Okay.
But they're not.
I know there are some decent IPAs.
Yeah.
I am personally not a huge fan. Like for me,
I like lagers too. Yeah.
yeah, I know, but it's just like I need to be able to see through my beer for me to enjoy it. If I can't see through it, then I'm probably not really gonna like it. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, I like. I mean, a beer that I can see through. Like
that's fair. And those are typically beers that aren't going to get you trash, right?
Also,
like I could probably, I can probably drink 8 Coronas, and
I'll tell you what, though. I mean, and I'm sure you know this. Drinking on the beach is like a whole different thing, right? Because it's like you got the sun and the sand and the water and everything. It's like taking it out of you. You don't even realize it. I mean, I think it was the 3rd of July. Like we sat on the beach. We had shade and everything, and I was so thirsty. I just kept drinking beers all day. And then I forgot what happened the last like 3 hours of the day that I was awake.
So when I was in Puerto Rico, same thing. And then I did a couple of shots of, I want to say it was whiskey. I don't know.
I thought you didn't drink liquor.
I don't. Like I had a cigar, and they were doing shots, and they're like, "Hey, you want a shot?" I'm like, "Nah, it's not me." Like, come on.
Do a shot.
Like, all right. I was like, yeah, whatever. So, and I didn't have any more rum, so I was like, all right, whatever. But it's not like
it's not your go-to.
I hate the term responsible drinkers because you're either responsible or you're not, right? You're either gonna like sit there and chug whatever you're drinking, or you're gonna be like, no, I know my limits, right? I hope the same thing translates to people that smoke weed. And I'm not trying to pass judgment. I'm just saying, like, that's not me. Like, I'm not trying to sit around and count, like, how many tiles I have on my floor or anything like that. I don't enjoy that. And I walk a fine line because
too many government PSAs.
Dude, I used to back in the day, every now and then.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Hit the little reefers. So it's just not my thing, The last time I partook in the sticky icky, it was on an accident. And I thought about it after the fact. This guy, we're at a party. One of my wife's friends' family had a party, and my man, like, he had brownies, and I didn't think about it until later. I was like, "Yo, why?" I was literally going like, "Why would a grown man have brownies at a party?"
Why else?
And later on, I was like, my wife says, "Yeah, are you okay?" I'm like, "I am not okay.
I am so far from okay right now."
Okay was like 45 minutes ago, and it was a terrible experience for me. I'm like, I stole a bag of chips on my way home.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It was horrendous.
And I look, I completely understand that is not. I mean, just like drinking is not something that everybody wants to do, right? Like it's not something that everybody's comfortable with. And I do think that yes, like if you're going to partake, be responsible in all cases, right? Like don't go out and drive. Don't be an idiot. Like don't harass people in public. Just like go have a good time.
Do your thing, yeah. And I'm not passing. It's just kind of.
I think, hear exactly what you're saying.
The warning lights for me are like
fucking hypocrite. Sorry.
Yeah, that's where we're at. The warning lights for me are like it's basically happening in front of my eyes. Like I got to experience it. I got to see it, and it's like I don't think politicians are listening.
Well, and so I think like for me, when it comes to drug use in general, right, and drug laws and enforcement and all of that, I'm generally of the opinion that you lock up end users when you're trying to fill the prison system.
Oh yeah, we gotta get rid of the private,
right? Like, and that's a huge chunk of it, and that doesn't. I mean, even like I was asking recently, just myself and somebody else, I don't remember, I was having the conversation, like in the states where they have either decriminalized or legalized, like what are they doing about the people who are in jail, right, for crimes related to that. And in some cases, they're going back depending on the offenses and like commuting sentences and doing that sort of thing. But it's certainly not all of it. And there's a lot of people who are still trying to figure out like exactly what's going on. But I guess my larger point is, so like my sister's living in Portugal now, right? Portugal was one of the first countries that basically decriminalized all drugs, so that like end use and possession of any substance is essentially not illegal. It's not a crime. And instead has been funneling their resources into rehabilitation centers, like you're saying, right? Providing the resources in the communities to try and combat it that way. And there's been some really interesting results. I don't have like specific statistics, but the general consensus is that it has started to show signs of actually improving both the numbers of drug users, reducing numbers of overdoses, getting more people the help that they need, and not punishing people for an addiction, right? Like,
but it's a slippery slope, right? And I think that that's the part that people.
But isn't everything a slippery slope?
Sure. I mean, you can't.
We're always parking on a slippery slope. Like, we just hope that the e-brake doesn't give out.
Well, I mean, that's fair, but I don't think that it's not without a cost, and that's why I caution people. It's for example, a few weeks ago I was coming back from Raleigh, and I noticed that when I went to Raleigh that morning, I noticed a lot of people, because I was stuck in traffic, there were a lot of people smoking cigarettes, like a lot, a metric ton to where I noticed it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I come home and I'm talking to my wife, and maybe we talked about this before. I'm like, babe, have you noticed people are smoking cigarettes a lot more lately? She goes, no. I'm like, I have. It's really weird. So she Googles it, and sure as the sun comes up, analog cigarette usage has gone up since COVID, right? So as a country, we did a great job of, whether it was fear tactics or health, like a warning of health, right? However you want to put that, to reduce the number of smokers. Well, for whatever reason, like during 2020, that number has increased, and the group is younger. And so I'm not talking people my age, your age, and older smoking. I'm talking like people my kids' age. And I'm like, that's weird, because my kids growing up, that was something that they're totally against. But I noticed that morning and that afternoon, there was a lot of kids, I don't want to say kids, but younger people smoking cigarettes. I'm like, something broke, right? So we have a good intent, but it doesn't necessarily negate the fact that the product's there and available, that people won't try it out. And once they try whatever the product may be, you add more to that population. So the math is never going to be on the fair side of like, we can control it. And it's just not the way math works. If it's accessible, people are going to do it.
Well, and so I think like it's important to understand the distinction in Portugal, because in their case, it's still illegal to, I think, like, transport or to import.
Oh, sure. But where's it coming from?
Well, trying to target the distributors as opposed to targeting the end users in the crime, in terms of that crime cycle, right?
Yeah, and I'll even analog Portugal with like New York, right? So once New York figures out what their laws are going to be, the problem they're going to have is, well, this group sells on 4 blocks. And now you're telling me I have to have a license to sell, and my competitor is our shops A through C. That's not going to go over very well.
Like, I mean, there will still be like black market distribution in that case, like people who do it without a license.
I mean, it goes. That's business.
It's exactly what's happening
Supply
right
and demand.
now, though.
Yeah. Well,
but it'll
I'm
be
saying, like,
at a lower cost or something like that in order to try and entice people to come in, as opposed to going. I mean, like, look, if it was me, I would spend the extra money to go to the dispensary and buy it from a legit place. Like,
that's fair, but I'm
but I also understand that that's not everybody, and I know, like, the idea is not to have like a dispensary be like Starbucks or a McDonald's where it's on every freaking corner, right? Like,
but they got food trucks.
Yeah, well, I mean, Denver, like in Colorado, like there are plenty of places where you can't throw a bong without hitting a head shop, like.
Right.
There's dispensaries everywhere. I mean, down here, it's like, I mean, at the beach, like CBD. I mean,
CBD,
that stuff's going kratom or kratom, whatever that stuff is.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard nasty shit about that, but it's herbal, and it's like, okay, well, like, weed grows in the ground. Like, how is that any different from the rest of these herbals? Cocaine, like, I mean, I just and I understand, like, I get it, but it just seems like at the end of the day, some of it seems so arbitrary. Just like somebody somewhere made the decision that we shouldn't let people do this. And it's like, you know what? We get one life.
Well, so the contradiction to that and the argument is, and I'm gonna like stop pulling punches here, right?
Yeah. Well, have you been pulling punches this whole time?
Well, I've been trying, because I've been trying not to like go to an extreme of the argument.
Okay.
Right. So when you look at,
we're going extreme now, is what you're saying.
I'm taking the gloves off. So when you look at the crack epidemic, the crack epidemic happened because like people in certain parts of the country couldn't afford cocaine,
right?
But the dealers knew, like, people really like cocaine. But the dealers are like, but I can't even get that to sell to my people. And if I did, they don't have the money to get it. So let me give them that little bit of that kick for something cheaper.
Yeah.
And hence crack. Terrible, like, scenario. That proposition was awful from the start. Nobody cared, because you had a group of people, and I'm not trying to even divide on race. Yeah. You had a group of people that could afford it, and they stayed on cocaine, and you didn't hear a lot of cocaine horror stories, but you heard a lot about the crack horror stories. And it was hands off from the national population. The national population didn't care about epidemics of these, like what I would call a hybrid drug, like until heroin hit.
Mm-hmm. Right, because then it hit the suburbs. Just like the opioid crisis, right? Like, people have been dealing with opioids for years, but now that it's affecting the suburbs and people are getting hooked on pain pills from their doctor and then going out and getting heroin and other opioids to try and fill that void, now it's a problem that we need to address. When we only need to address it in the suburbs. We don't need to worry about the inner cities. Like, they got their own problems, and I'm with you on that. Like, and I know you know this, but it's like, like the inequities in that way are completely, like, I mean, I get why they're there, but they shouldn't be. Like, there's no real logical reason that you could sit there and say, like, well, this group of people deserves this and this group of people doesn't, unless at your core you are just like a racist, like, fucking whatever, POS, classist piece of shit. Yeah. I mean, like,
well, I'm not trying to, again, I don't really, I care, but I don't care. And I say that
right
with a lot of duplicity, because I don't think that the argument, like, when things are going well for people, and I've known people that have had drug addiction problems or alcohol problems, they're not turning to that crap. Like, the problem is you have whole groups of society. People don't do drugs or go to alternate stimulants because their life is great. You can have all the rehab centers in the world. What are they really trying to fix? And we haven't really addressed those issues. So, and that's my bigger problem. It's like all that stuff, you can decriminalize whatever you want, like however you want to play that out. Why are kids using opioids? Why are, kids in the suburbs, shooting up heroin?
Yeah.
Because
life's depressing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you living here in the United States, right? Like,
it's time for politics.
For the last 4 years, we put up with one of the most crazy people in our country running everything. Right?
Agent Orange.
Yeah. Then we've gone through now, like crippling educational debt, right? Like student loan debt.
Right.
No great job market prospects. Like, oh, I can take this degree that I spent $150,000 on and go get a $35,000 a year job at, wherever. Like, maybe I can make $50,000 a year after a few years. But I can't afford a house. I can barely afford rent. Unfortunately, there is a large chunk of a younger generation that does not see a light at the end of the tunnel. Like they don't see good things coming to them as they get older, and part of it is because they've seen the generations before them deal with some of this shit. And it's not to say that it isn't fixable, but it's hard sometimes not to look around and say, like, wow, we're kind of screwed. Like, where we are with global warming or climate change and the stuff in
the floods in
Europe, the fires in the Pacific Northwest,
fires in the West Coast.
Like,
yeah,
the planet is basically trying to rid itself of us at any cost, and it will eventually if we don't get our shit together. Like, and there's a huge the people who are quote unquote in charge, right, or the people who have influence, don't really seem to give a shit about it. And so I don't know. Like I feel some of this sometimes too, and like I worry about my daughter's generation, like her growing up. Like, what opportunities are there going to be? What is life going to be like? What is this planet going to have left by the time that she's my age? And that's in 30 years. That's not that long from now. But the last 30 years, I feel like stuff has gone way off the rails from where it was when I started at 7. Like,
I want to take a shot at media and social media. Like, I'm going to take this shot pretty crisp and clean. First of all, like, I'm sure there are good journalists out there, but I've actually stopped watching the news because what they cover has quickly become clickbait.
Yeah. Because they're all having to sell advertising at the end of the day. Like, that's a horrible way to build your system, to build revenue on the backs of a journalistic integrity. Like,
the irony is, like, I was listening to they were talking about the minimum wage on I don't remember what I was watching, but they echoed something I've always said. Well, if your product's that bad, maybe you shouldn't be in business. If you can't make this work, you probably shouldn't be in business. I kind of feel that way about the news. It's like, look, I don't want to watch the news for clickbait.
Yeah.
The stupid argument of, and Jake Tapper, like, I don't know if it was just like a gimmick, but it really kind of pissed me off because apparently the President Biden had made a comment of like, he was asked about what social media and the pandemic. And he said, well, they're killing people.
Yeah.
And, Jake Tapper, and I'm paraphrasing here, and Mr. Tapper, I don't know you like that. I'm just saying, as objectively, I didn't like what you did. I just thought it was kind of shitty, basically. And I'm gonna rant now because this has been building up.
I got my rant in. It's all you.
My dude says, and Mr. Tapper, if you ever listen to this, or if somebody ever says whatever, like, this is my point. Your body language made it seem like what the president said was wrong. And what he said was actually right. Has anybody not noticed, including you, Mr. Tapper, and people at CNN, and you guys run the ads, Facebook is really trying to do this whole re-imaging thing. Like, they actually care about internet standards and blah, blah, blah. They don't give a flying shit. Every click is probably, for them, is worth, it's one part of another $1 billion that they're going to earn this year. They do not care about how their algorithm influences people, period. What the president said was accurate. Your statement was a partisan, talking point. Well, Mr. President, Mr. Biden did say that they're killing people, and now he's walking it back. No, he's actually being honest. Like, it's a true fact. I don't care if it's only 12 people that have all these followers or blah, blah, blah that can influence people not getting the vaccine. You're wrong in making it a partisan talking point.
Well, and you clearly don't understand how social media works if you think that the number of direct followers that a person has is the extent of their influence. It's exponential based on the followers of their followers if they start sharing it. Oh my.
And I'm not coming,
no,
I know
it's
that
not he doesn't
people
know
get on.
that. This is where
that's what
it's
I'm
this
saying. It's
disingenuous position just for clickbait. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'm not even trying to it's look, so the media is wrong in how they cover the news, because I don't want your opinion. I want you to report the news and step back and let me decide how I feel about it. Social media is wrong. I still don't understand why people flock to social media. I just don't understand it.
I don't know.
It's I haven't used Twitter in weeks now. I just don't care. I don't care. I don't care about anybody's opinion that is just about getting people to like or comment or whatever. I've just completely disengaged. It's not that I'm afraid of it. It's just unimportant to me.
No, because what is the ultimate value in that? If you're pandering to the lowest common denominator, right? You and I are not, I don't believe, the type of people that are here for pandering. I don't want somebody to pander to me. Let me choose the things that I'm entertained by, right? The things that I enjoy. Just present the things that you do your way, and I'll decide whether or not I like it. Don't.
I got a bone to pick with Jake Tapper. That's what, it's just dude, people talk about their quote unquote platform. You have an hour and some change to report the news, possibly give an opinion because it's more editorial. I get that. But you're part of the fucking problem. You literally are part of the fucking problem. It's just, and I hate, well, I don't hate, I put some pepper in my food right there, so I'm not going to lie. But it's let's call it what it is. Don't pretend you're nonpartisan and actually feel the fire, because what happens later is you show a story about people that aren't getting vaccinated. Yeah. Well, you've already implied your opinion on what you think the administration is doing, whether you want to admit it or not. So Jake Tapper, I'm not calling you out, but you're wrong, dude.
This is, I mean, to me, it keeps coming back to, if you want to be on the right side of this at the end of it, you have to maintain some level of moral high ground. And
there's no such thing. Fuck that. There's no such thing as moral high ground. It's the difference between right and wrong.
If you want to have any meaningful impact on this at the end of the day, you have to understand the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah. Okay. I can agree with that, because morality can be subjective.
Sure.
Right. A white supremacist feels they have a biblical morality, and I think that is completely the opposite of anything that has to do with the faith of Christianity.
Yeah.
So the difference between right, and I'm not trying to crap on you. I'm just saying no, I'm going to speak plainly about it. People don't understand what morals are, but they do understand the difference between right and wrong. Morality is really very.
But I also think that we're at a point now where people are really struggling to understand the difference between right and wrong. What they believe is right is what they are fighting for in a lot of cases, and it's not. They don't see it as being wrong. I mean, the whole the riots on January 6th, right? They see that as this was us standing up to prevent our country from being stolen from us, right? Partly because they believe the lies of an insane clown, and partly because the media just kept feeding that stuff to them, right? Social media, mainstream media, whatever it was that they were listening to. But at the end of the day, that's what they believed, right? That's part of the issue that we're fighting. I feel like we're fighting here is that this is an ingrained belief that people have. It's not something that you can just convince them, hey, I know you believe this, and I'm willing to let this go if we can move past this, but you got to kind of come like, no, they are just like, this is what I believe, and there's nothing that you can say that is going to change my mind. And to me, that's scary. Like,
so I believe that your belief system is often reflected in your actions.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't believe those people like really believe that crap, because if that were true, the people that have actually gone to court and had to defend their actions all denied their quote unquote beliefs. So I don't know if it's just an expedient way to sometimes grab attention or to want to prove a point, and I'm not trying to argue over semantics. I'm saying, like, I believe certain things and I act in those certain things. Things I don't believe in, I just don't rock with.
But you don't think that I mean, showing up in D.C. and deciding to break into Congress, those aren't actions that demonstrate their belief
their
at
actions.
the time?
No, I don't, because I don't think our society has created people that are willing to be martyrs for their cause. If I'm being honest.
But I don't think that they saw it as being martyrs. They saw it as, this is overwhelming force. There was nobody stopping them.
That's an emotional attachment, right? So I've been in places where like things get really rowdy and people start fighting.
Sure.
Right. People that believe in defending themselves and like, getting out of said situation alive. Yo, those guys go in. I go in. I'm like, yo, I'm not even trying to, like, I don't wake up saying like, I might have to break this guy's arm. But like, if it means breaking your arm and, leaving, sure, I'm going to do that.
Okay.
It's so different than people that say, well, I have a gun for self-defense. And my question's always like, are you willing to kill somebody?
Right.
Like, I would never pull a gun on somebody with the intent not to kill them.
Okay.
So, it's probably just my own personal ideology that makes me kind of struggle with the fact that the people on January 6th really believed I think that it's the hype of the big lie. And I even hate the term the big lie.
I mean,
if I'm being honest.
So in that case, do you think that they just saw it as an opportunity?
Yeah.
But they didn't actually believe anything that was
Yes.
being fed to them?
Yeah. And they got caught. I really, like, I don't think humans are that evolved or that like emotionally complicated to where it can't be anything more base than that. If I saw one case where somebody literally like defended themselves saying in court, right, knowing the consequences, I do not rescind anything I said or did, then I would probably be challenged in that thought. But everybody that's gone to court, whether they're being truthful or not, they're quick to say, I believe the president, or there's a reason why, there's an excuse why they did what they did.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, is like they believed the lie. That was still a belief, though.
No, it was an opportunity, back to what you said. I think at the core of every human being is being selfish, right? At the end of the day, people are going to be selfish. There's nothing wrong with that. But if my selfishness can protect me from having a consequence that's negative to me, I'm probably going to be like, well, the president, Donald Trump said to do that. They took the opportunity. They didn't think anything was going to happen to them. Like, why are so many people saying like they actually, the president at the time, I hate to even call that piece of shit the president, but why are so many people using that as their defense? It's not a belief system. Like, I just choose not to, to pretend like that's the case. They had an opportunity to do something to be somewhat anti-system, and they took it. Like, I'm not trying to like.
I mean, I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it. I think It is.
Now there are some white supremacists that are like running around, whatever. Sure, but the vast majority of the people that have gone to court, from what I've seen.
Well, I guess part of what I feel like part of that is because he immediately turned around and was like, "I didn't do this. This isn't what I wanted," and so they're kind of like, "Oh, like."
It's no different. All right, so
But
real talk. It's no different than the fact that right now, Cubans in Miami, and like I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, so I'm watching the news and they're talking about the protests in Cuba. It was bananas funny. Her response was not what I was expecting. She was basically like, yeah, and a vast majority of Cubans voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump did nothing to help them the entire time he was in office. And now they want the person that did not get, as a country, we should probably try to influence that. We don't control it, sure. But her point was, now they're blaming Biden for whatever, or like he should step in and do something. Well, what about your boy? The stuff wasn't changing even when he was in office.
But that's not. I mean, it's like dealing with any anti-Biden or Trump supporter at this point. You know, like there is no logical conversation that you can have. I mean, I told you about my batshit crazy conversation with someone that, I mean, straight up told me that they believe that Donald Trump was a truther, right? Like that he was in search of the truth and that he was the only one who ever stepped up and was going to do something for the regular people and to stop, this tyrannical, like oppressive, secret cabal government that has been run by the Clintons and the Bidens and, whoever else for all these years. And that because then when confronted with, well, what about all of the people that he put in charge of things who came out and said that everything was fine, that there was nothing wrong with the election? Well, those could be plants, those could be people who had other agendas. Maybe somebody got to them already. There's no logical conversation that you can have to bring that type of person back from that right now. Not that I can see. I mean, like I sat there and had this conversation and just refuted every single thing with the things that I've seen. And I'm like, what about this? And talking about like he sat there and said these ridiculous things at live, streams of his, campaign rallies and press briefings and stuff. Oh, well, I didn't watch everything. Okay, but I'm telling you, he said that. Like, if I show it to you right now, does that change your opinion of him? Well, probably not. It's probably been doctored now. Like, these are the mental gymnastics that some people do. And I'm not saying it's everybody. Like,
but it's inconsequential in my opinion, right? Like, it's not my... Our political system is hacky at best. And I'll get case in point. Actually, early spring, there was a number of votes, like on the Republican side, where they're like fighting against for the People Act. They're like, oh yeah, we'll vote for the John Lewis bill, right? And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And I don't remember the count, but it was probably enough to where you could have squeaked it through the Senate. My argument the other day when I heard about they're still trying to push for HR 1, but they're also trying to negotiate over the John Lewis bill. I'm like, the Democrats are just as full of crap as the Republicans. Yes. Because if it's me and I'm really concerned about voting rights, I get the first win and build a foundation of that. I don't try to get you don't. I know I have to
swing for the fences on the first at bat.
No,
right? Like you're not trying. Yeah, that's you're trying to get it all, and part of it is because I'm sure that they see that there's and like they've got a 2-year window to try and get it done, right? Because they're
well, fuck. It's like I always keep saying, like, where are these bills at? Like,
what's going on?
I'm always,
right?
Like show me the results of, this is what we have in our list, and we're gonna this year we're gonna try to focus. But we have bills that we have queued up to go. They're not gonna change.
Yeah,
they're not gonna change from midterm to midterm. No.
But this, you're right. Like our government has devolved into it's an awful bureaucracy. It's a whole bunch of like layers and red tape and obstruction that I think initially was designed to be some level of checks and balances, but has grown so unwieldy at this point that it just stops anything from actually happening that's going to have a positive impact on the people that it's supposed to be helping, right?
It's a stupid argument of critical race theory. If I hear anybody else bring that shit up again, I'm like, please help me understand your disagreement with this, right? You're talking about a graduate level class that isn't taught at most schools. Typically attorneys or people getting like MBAs and like some random disciplines. Sure. I don't want to say random, but specific disciplines go over CRT. And you got little suburban white women crying in like freaking wherever they are. Like, I don't want my third grader learning that, because I don't want critical race theory. I'm not racist. You probably are. Like, first of all, let's start with that. You probably are. But it's not something, it's like the media has figured out. And I blame them all for just like these sound bite after sound bite of clickbait. And it's not even that it has to be digital. It's just to get your eyeballs to pay attention to it.
In one way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter. But they need your attention because your attention is a finite resource. Right?
Yeah, they have figured out a way to be the most, and I'm not saying we get rid of the freedom of the press. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying refocus your efforts on something that's useful. We need to free the press
from itself at this point. Like, I mean, but really, like, we need to free to some degree. It's almost like we have to free the press from the need of having to make money. It's another area where in some ways, like capitalism and press.
No, please don't do this. God, but it's not I saw this guy on YouTube. He's a freaking like he craps all over.
But I'm not saying that it's exclusive. It's not that capitalism is inherently bad. There are some areas where for profit doesn't always mean that you're getting the best results, right?
So you say that, but I would argue that I would argue
more
this
about like trying to squeeze every penny out of your profits.
No, my argument would always be this: let the company fail.
But they're not failing. That's the problem. Is that the government is supporting those companies?
Yeah, so that might actually remove the subsidies. Yeah. Unless it's like mission critical.
Well, but that's a slippery slope. How do you define mission critical? What's mission critical for you might be different from mission critical for me, might be different from mission critical for somebody else.
Mission critical is like food.
Okay.
Shelter.
So what about like the automobile industry when the big three were in deep shit?
That's not mission critical.
But you let two giant auto manufacturers close. Where do all those jobs go? Where do all those people
Wherever they're going to go anyway. Like Dodge, Chrysler, whoever they are now, they had 3 mergers since, right? GM, no different. Like, we should have let GM fail. They didn't even need the money. They took the money. They gave a kickback to the government. They should have failed, right? Okay. Ford didn't take the cash, and they have struggled, made their own mistakes, and
produced one of the ugliest electronic vehicles ever.
It's not the point. I actually did see the Mustang, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of it's super dope though. Did I tell you I saw I saw a Lambo SUV? It was dope. I've seen too.
Yeah,
but that's
cool.
But my point being, you let those companies fail.
But I'm just saying that your definition of mission critical is
food, shelter. Yeah.
So if I'm a house builder, I'm saying if I'm a construction company that builds houses, then I should get bailed out by the government?
No, that would be like I'm being general.
Well, I know.
My point.
I'm financial institutions.
You're
well, I am because I'm trying to make a point.
No, I don't think financial institutions should be bailed out by the government.
Okay, so
So food, like mission critical being, does this impact our, like the reason why, like, God, screw you for this.
I'm sorry, but I play devil's advocate. That is like my role on this podcast.
I'm trying to like go to all the threads of where like I can get shot down.
Yeah, you're already like seeing my arguments as you try to create your argument. I understand.
But you know what I mean, like to be plain, right? So a builder, like if you build houses, no, that's not mission critical, right? What's mission critical is how did Colonial Pipeline get hacked, and we okay that to be for them to pay almost what $3.5 million.
They're a private company.
Nope, doesn't matter. Nope, we should not give contracts to go over interstate lines without some type of guardrails. Because then you put yourselves. Then that's where you fuel. That's where you fuel the like capitalism is bad argument, right? There is an intelligent amount of regulation that we should have. We should have common sense regulation. Yes. You made a statement earlier. I wanted to kind of respond to. Our political system is our own problem. Yeah. We create this problem every 2 to 4 years.
Sure. I agree.
So what we need to do is Chuck Schumer's not I don't know Chuck Schumer. I don't assume he's a bad guy. But for fuck's sake.
But he's not doing anything to help the rest of us. Right? Like, that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. That's the frustrating thing.
The Republican Party, for the most part, has said we're gonna put our heels in on every issue.
It doesn't matter. If Joe Biden said, I want to abolish gun regulations, the Republican Party would figure out a way to be against that.
Try and take your guns. Yeah.
This is a trap. Because once you vote, he's going to say, oh, you voted in favor for it. Now we're coming to your house and the Gestapo's going to get you.
Yeah, I literally heard Chris Cuomo the other night say that he owns a gun, and he was like, but people didn't know that. I'm like, nah, I don't. I wouldn't be for or against that, right? My problem isn't guns. No. My problem is the fact that people keep getting killed by AR-15s.
People keep getting killed by guns that are in a number of not even a number, but in an alarmingly high number of cases through means that should not be allowed. Through private sales that aren't tracked, through gun show loopholes, through things where they're not having to get background checked. Right. I mean, if I have to get a license to drive my car and I have to retake a test in order to prove that I can still drive my car.
These are the same people that want to have the argument about voting ID. Right. Like I'm on the fence about that all the time. Right.
Me too. Because on the one hand, yes, like I understand the idea behind wanting to have some level of okay, I'm not just walking up and say, yeah, I'm John Doe, let me vote. Right. I'm Jim Smith. Okay, but at the same time, the reason that it's such a hamper is because we've created such a terrible system for getting IDs to the point where we've
or if you even if you get more nitpicky. If you look at where most check cashing places, and I did this experiment with my son in New York. When I'm in Manhattan, I don't see a check cashing place. I see banks, right? When I'm in Queens, when I'm walking through certain parts of Harlem, guess what I see? Check cashing places. So what does that tell you? It tells you that you're not even trying to fix the problem.
Because what don't you see in Queens, right? Financial institutions that aren't check cashing, banks. You don't see that,
right? And in certain parts of Queens, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So it's so you're saying and people typically that go to check cashing places, it's normally because of not just credit, because not everybody needs credit, right? It's because of identification. It's because they don't have a driver's license. I don't drive, so why do I need a driver's license? Or there's a myriad of reasons, and we always go to a surface level problem that only covers a portion of the population as opposed to looking at a holistic solution, right?
Everybody's got a fingerprint.
Yeah. Well, not everybody. I know a guy that doesn't have all the
Retinal
speakers.
scans before you can vote.
But my point being is that it's like, look, I'm not. I know that our media is jacked up. I know social media it's a crutch,
Yeah.
right? The only reason social media is a thing is because I think there's a certain level of distrust with the news in general.
Yeah, and then there's also like that it's a serotonin machine is what it is.
Oh,
Right?
sure.
Like, and that's enough. I mean, that's the reason people do a lot of drugs. Like, the reason people smoke pot a lot of the times is because it's a serotonin machine. Like,
and I'm again like
I know that you're not like nobody should smoke pot. I know that like that's not
that's not my argument.
no. You know, like I get that. And yeah, like I'm here to play devil's advocate because that's what I like to do. I will.
You like to see
Well,
me grow like gray
Yeah,
hairs
so
and-
I do. I have to tell this story because it's fantastic. So when Andre was over helping me move the pool table, we loaded I think we had gotten all three pieces in the back, and we were trying to get everything strapped down so that it wouldn't go anywhere. And my dad's there, and we get the straps in, and I go to my dad says.
And Bob comes
Yeah,
at me.
I don't remember. He said something. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but my dad said something to the effect of, "Well, yes, that's the idea, Andre." And Andre was about a half a second from being like, "You know what?" Excuse me. I had to catch myself there because I thought that was your son.
Oh man, I was like, "Yo, we're doing this now." You're coming in hot, Bob. You're
My
coming in
dad
hot.
loves you so much, though. Like, it's so funny. He's a big fan of Andre. But yeah, like I think I'm sitting here making these arguments in part because I am more in favor of seeing marijuana become legalized, a la alcohol and tobacco, and regulated. And also because I guess like I struggle sometimes when I hear the terms like slippery slope or, like where do you draw the line? Like I'm with you. Ultimately, I think there's a right and a wrong, right? Like it's not right for a man to marry a goat. So yeah, like I'm not in favor of that. But if a dude wants to go marry another dude, I don't care. Like, that has literally no impact. I mean, granted, a dude marrying a goat really has no impact on me either. But,
It's just kind of
yeah,
weird.
still saying that ultimately, like, yeah, you gotta draw the line somewhere. So I say we draw it with animals.
You want syphilis? That's how you get
Yeah.
syphilis. That's how you destroy South America.
But that's hence me kind of pushing and asking some, incendiary questions or being a little difficult is because I like to try and just break through that sometimes when I can to say like,
yeah, but
everything's a slippery slope. If you want to use that argument, I could say, like, whoa, you here, down there, like, where are we gonna be?
So remember how I was saying I should have went to law school because I don't have time for the mental gymnastics.
But that's
I just
all
don't.
law
It's like,
is.
But speak plainly, right? Like you can't. I don't think it's intellectually.
You feel like I'm being intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. Like you know that's
not
thing.
true. You know that.
But I'm not. It's not like an attack against you. But like for me,
You just called me intellectually dishonest, and now you're going to say it's not an attack.
But because it's like you. But you know how my brain isn't like I think from point A to point B. Right?
Right, and I'm trying to help you understand how there might be point A1 and point A2.
There is no
there
point.
Is.
No, you know that's not true. No, but like you're arguing. Sometimes you
got to stop at the gas station on the road trip, Andre.
Well,
get some snacks.
My
get some corn nuts.
You should have ate before you left. So, my point being is that you have to like between point A and point B. You're right. A1 does exist. A2 does exist. But people say, well, but we can get to point B. Like we can make this whole. you try to carry legalization with decriminalization, right? They argue.
Okay, what?
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on. People try to carry the two and marry the
Sure.
two without thinking about the consequences of everybody involved. They only think about their subset. They're like, oh, we want to do this because I don't see a potential like
Right, risk to
damaging
me
effect.
or
Yeah.
my family or my community.
Right.
Sure.
With excluding and that's where like my perspective is kind of like, yes, I get that. But if you're gonna go and other people are gonna follow you, are you trying to get just a few people to follow you or everybody to follow you? Because we often look through things through our own lens, right? My lens is not just the suburbs or like this and that. It's also like, yeah, but that doesn't work over here. And that's what I'm trying to like, that's how I think about it. And I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying like, hey, but have you thought about this? Hey, like, if you're trying to get everybody to go this way, like, is that everybody, or just like some of everybody? It doesn't work.
Well, and that's why I guess, in my opinion, I think that if you go the legalization with regulation and restrictions and taxation, the tax money has to go towards a significant chunk of it towards producing rehab opportunities and facilities in all communities, right? Like there would, in my mind, if I were in a political position to, like a senator who is trying to get on board, that would be something that I would require ultimately is like, how are we going to take this money that we are earning from this and reinvest it into the communities that need the most help first? Right? Like I try to turn what has been a huge negative into a positive where we can. But I get that it may not seem like, maybe that's a big leap. Maybe I'm too naive or too hopeful.
It's not that. I think that the perfect example is the new Subway commercials, right? I saw one like so we rewatched the Olympic trials for gymnastics last night. God, that was a long night.
Is somebody holding a gun to your head? You will watch it and you will root for the USA.
But it was like the U.S. Olympic trials.
So
like
yeah, you're not even rooting for the USA. Like it's
yeah,
all
it's
USA.
Like,
Go.
Like 4 people can go and the rest
Well,
cannot.
except for the one that tested positive, even though she's fully vaccinated.
Well, that's fair. So Subway's got this new ad campaign. They've got Steph Curry in one commercial, then they've got Serena Williams. They've got Tom Brady, and I'm like, yeah. And my wife's like, can they afford that? I'm like, Subway can. Their franchisees may not be able to afford that, but they're definitely trying to reinvest to save.
Yes.
They
are completely. I'm sure you saw they're completely revamping their menu, so they're introducing a bunch of new stuff. They have thinner now turkey and ham, which I didn't realize the problem was their deli meat was too thick. But I do know that there's also this weird thing with deli meat, right? Where it's like,
right.
Obviously, I'm not much of a deli meat eater these days, so it doesn't affect me. But I hit up Subway pretty regularly for a veggie delight. I can get a good foot-long sandwich there for $8 or something, like $7.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the one down here doesn't do the BOGO, buy one get one 50% off, unfortunately. But
because they shouldn't.
Well,
it's
a terrible deal. So the $5 footlongs that basically put all the franchisees out of business.
Yeah, it's like they understand they're in a tough spot. They're trying to reinvest. They're probably footing, I would say, a good majority of that bill. But that's what our country should do also, right? It's like, look, hey, things aren't good. I'm not sure if I'm okay or if I've signed on completely with $3.5 trillion, right? I know.
You're talking about the infrastructure bill? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that even impacts me.
Sure.
Because I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of how we tax our citizens. And since I was 19, I've always had to give these MFs a check. So I'm not the right person for the argument. But my point being is as a country, we should probably adopt some of what Subway's doing. Like, hey, we've got to have the right message. We have to figure out a way to communicate where people are and at least get the, and I hate the word or the term buy-in, but at least get the support of, hopefully we've thought about it before we presented it, so we have the support of the people that actually have to live with it, right? And I know that's actually the definition of buy-in.
No, but I mean, like, you're right. Ultimately, you need something that people can get behind, right? That people understand why we're doing it the way that we're doing it, and what the ultimate end goal is, right? So if it's infrastructure, then look, we want to make it so that your drive to work every day is less damage to your car, right? Like does less damage to your car and is ultimately going to cost you less money in upkeep on your vehicle, right? And make
send some of that money to Virginia,
right? Or South Carolina.
I swear to God, or South Carolina. I can give you states to fix their freaking roads, to fix why did it take me an hour and 20 minutes to get off a bridge and into Queens? Yeah. And I only drove 20 miles.
See, and if it's legalization of pot, then you just need a good slogan like "Get high on our own supply, buy U.S. grown marijuana."
All right, so fun fact: Canada owns most of the growers or the farms in Canada, and I believe they have control of their hands in most of the distribution. And they've lost money every year since they've legalized marijuana.
But that's also the Canadian government trying to run stuff. I think...
I'm just saying, they should hire some black people in Canada.
Well, yeah. I mean, they need more black people that aren't French. No offense. No French. You see what I did there?
Saw what you did there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Look, I've often not understood why the state of and I do understand why, because it is in the Southeast. It is very conservative.
It's the ninth largest state in the country, to hear Pat McCrory say it a lot.
But because of tobacco farms and stuff like that, it seemed like a pretty easy sell. Like, hey guys, convert half of your tobacco farm into hemp or marijuana, right? Grow CBD, and then basically the tobacco companies start taking over. Not that I really want big tobacco running the weed industry, but at least you get people to stop smoking cigarettes.
Apparently that's not even
well,
working.
No, it's not. But I was just saying, just let them smoke weed. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't have a dog in that fight. I just think that because I'm not going to smoke weed. So for me, it's it's not even an issue. It's just a matter of if that's what we're going to do, if that's what people decide is the path they want to take, make sure that you're not leaving everybody behind in that decision. Yeah. So that would be my message to any politician.
And I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, it's I don't care, because I'm not going to sit around and roll one with anybody. It's just you got to think about go to the Senate. I can't remember which committee. They went down to Atlanta, I think the Rules Committee, to look at the laws that they're passing for voting in Georgia. I'm maybe you guys should do that more. Maybe part of your job should be to go where people are, and it's not a pitch. You may actually disprove your own theory by going to these places, right? The argument about the laws of the Republicans are passing in Texas. Yeah. Not all of them are necessarily bad.
Right.
It's just a matter of, and I'm not trying to play both sides of the fence.
But this is where we've gotten to, right? In this stupid battle between mainstream media and politicians and all this stuff, where it's you have to pick a side, right? It's either Republicans bad, Democrats good, or vice versa, but
they at the same time they're also saying we need two parties.
Yeah, no, I know, But we need the Republican Party to be more like the Democratic Party is what the Democrats think. And then we need the Democratic Party to be more like the Republican Party is what the Republicans think. And the rest of us are sitting here in the middle going, you're both freaking crazy and you're not doing anything. And we're getting really sick and tired of it.
So what's interesting is like I believe it's less than 60% of the country is partisan. That's combined, right? So it makes me wonder if we have, as a country, a problem of giving the loudspeaker or the microphone to the wrong people.
Sure.
All the time. Because in New York, and I do follow New York politics because I might, if I'm rich enough or I can afford it, not to say rich enough, but if I can afford it, I might retire there. Like Eric Adams, like he won. And people would think that New York is a very progressive place, but it's really not. It's pretty in the middle of the road. And I believe most politics are in the middle of the road.
People say the same thing about California, right? Oh, California is so progressive. No, it has weird progressive pockets.
Just on fire.
And then a whole bunch of really weird, like, conservatives. Not even like really weird conservatives, but just there's a lot of red. I mean, California, like it's kind of crazy when you think about it from an electoral voting map, right? Like, what is it, 55 electoral votes or something like that California is worth? And I mean, even if the state's 70-30, like, that's crazy that all 55 get awarded to the Democrats every year. Like, I mean, on some hand, like, you almost understand, not to justify, but like, okay, I kind of see why Republicans feel like they have to just rig the whole game, in their favor. But
they're in diminishing,
right?
Like, it's diminishing. Like it doesn't. Their platform doesn't.
And that's
exist.
the issue, right? Like that's the underlying issue is that for me, I cannot get behind the Republican Party at any point because there is no platform. There are no issues that they actually hold near and dear. It's simply obstruction, like to the other party, and what seems to be oppression of anybody that doesn't look like us.
Yeah, and I think they try to play both sides
exactly.
of the coin. And like fiscally, I kind of agree with.
Yeah, I am not in favor of dumping every last penny we have into programs that aren't doing anything. Right, like spend the money where it's going to actually make the impact, but spend the money that we need to spend. Not, I'm not spending any money because my guy's not in charge. Like that's not how this works.
What's weird and like. Just opposing to that is that most of the people that lead that party are from states that really need federal funds just to stay afloat, which I really don't get. It's like
it is this
Kentucky,
dude. It doesn't make any sense. Like that's what is so frustrating about this is that the people who are in charge, they understand, right? Like Mitch McConnell knows that Kentucky, his state, is just constantly sucking off of the federal government's teat. Right? Like, without that state dries up and just shrivels into nothing. Okay? And yet, his only goal right now is to obstruct the federal government from doing its job.
Florida? Get out of here. Florida is I hate to say it, but Florida is a shit state. I don't even like
There's
Florida.
a reason that all the hurricanes and tropical storms head to Florida.
Like... And I got family that lives in Florida, but
that's their mistake.
I don't give a shit about
Nobody told you had to live there. I have family that just moved from California down there.
God, in California, that place, my son's there, and I'm like, that place is on fire, and it's like 110 degrees. Like, why would you want to live there? And I know he's doing it for work, but it's like, he's been through 3 earthquakes. It's been 6 months.
Now, granted, I mean, like, we've had some crazy-ass thunderstorms down here lately. Like, I mean, over the last several weeks, like, I mean...
Sure.
Yeah, like, there was one time...
But I live in the center of the state.
No, I understand.
All that stuff dissipates
by the time it gets here. No, I know. You are not the one who chose to live out on the coast. I understand. No, I mean, like, we had one day where I was in the car with my kid, and we went to Publix, and, like, I had just driven through the rain earlier. There were those big, heavy drops and, like, crazy wind. But then I came back down to the island and everything was fine. We got to Publix and it's just started like downpouring. And next thing I knew, like the wind was blowing so hard the car started moving. And I was like standing on the brake, the car's in park, and I'm pulling on the emergency brake, like trying to make sure it's not going anywhere. I mean, a shopping cart blew over and knocked into the door.
Dude.
Like, yeah.
No.
I was looking for the tornado.
Everything you said. I'm not even trying to do that.
I mean, I'm not trying to do that. That was just like, I didn't know what else to do in that moment because we had just pulled in and the next thing, like it had started to rain, but then it got really bad and we were like in the car and I wasn't going to try and run inside because I was like, well, that sounds just as dangerous. But
I want to kind of wrap it up with this because like we'll talk for
I
hours.
know. This is what happens when we don't record in a month.
I know. I was thinking about when I mentioned Florida, the building that collapsed. Yeah. And I'll say this honestly. When I first saw the news report, like I was like, man, it sucks. But then the cynical part of me was wondering why the news kept playing it.
Sure.
And I'm like, yo, you guys come on, man. I'm not trying to, there's nothing we can do. Like, figure it out. And, I'm sorry that there's a human side and there's like come on, guys, please. Now, the cynical side was actually right. Like, unfortunately. Yeah. And I've seen this happen with, whether it be Ahmaud Arbery, whether it be with George Floyd, whether it be with Breonna Taylor, it's just like, we're going to, I guess the term is, if it bleeds, it bleeds. If it bleeds, it leads. And so death, destruction is something that the news tries to highlight. But it got me to thinking about, like, how in some ways Florida has been it's like the contrast in North Carolina. National elections typically Republican, state elections you typically have a Democrat governor, and that could be because of population or a myriad of
you're
things,
talking about North Carolina here. Okay.
Yeah. But
I don't remember Florida's the last time Florida had a Democratic governor.
But Florida, it's like it's like this selfish human desire. When things are good and we don't have to fix anything, we'll go with the status quo. But it made me think about, how did that building with so many issues not get repaired? Yeah. Like, it really made me like just kind of ponder that for a little bit. It's like, look, guys, I'm not saying like I'm by far, like, I'm no longer a partisan person. Like, that's not my argument. It's, let's talk about policy and let's talk about what's right versus what's wrong.
Talk about solutions, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's fix this stuff.
From the mayor from the county mayor to the city mayor, then you go back up to the state legislator, to the governor. Why aren't they concerned about protecting people's well-being before the accident, before the destruction? That's 160 people dead because a lot of people didn't do their job.
I mean, I wish that I had an answer for you. Like, it's like on the one hand, the whole state of Florida is kind of a temple to man's arrogance, right? Like, we don't care that there are tropical storms and hurricanes and every animal here wants to kill you. This is basically a mini Australia. We are going to flock here in droves, right? Because the beaches are nice. And there's Disney World, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what else there is in Florida. I mean, like that whole thing with the building collapse, there's a couple of things that I was thinking of while you were talking about it. So, like, them showing it on the news over and over again immediately takes me back to 9/11, right? Because what did we see for, like, weeks after that? Was those two towers falling, the second plane hitting, right? Like, we had to watch that over and over. If we were tuned in, which the majority of us were kind of like, we don't. I mean, I was in high school. I didn't really know. Like, I'd never experienced anything like that before. You know, like national tragedy on that level where I was old enough to really comprehend what was going on, and didn't understand why anybody would ever do that, and was, you know, very much on the mindset that, like, we're gonna find who did this and they're gonna be brought to justice. Like, there will be, you know, like a reckoning for this. And so it was like, that's what you kept waiting for, right? It was like, who did this? What's gonna happen? How are they gonna? And I mean, what took like 10, 20 years to finally resolve any of that?
Well,
yeah,
15
yeah,
to finally catch Bin
Right.
Laden, and 20 years to decide that, yeah, we just can't fix
well,
this.
and I mean, us going into Iraq and Afghanistan after that,
Second time.
yeah, like, yeah, there's just so many bad decisions obviously made off of bad information, or bad intentions in some cases, or both, right? Like, I think it was obviously a combination of both in some. But, you know, like in this case, there isn't that enemy in that same way, right? That's not, there's an enemy, but it's trying to, who's the person who was responsible ultimately? Was it the condo management? Was it the, you know, the HOA? Was it the inspectors? Was it the architect? Like, who can we blame for this? Who do we hold accountable for this, or responsible? I know that only people can hold themselves accountable.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with that one for a while.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's where it seems like we get to as a society. It's like, you know, you say, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, what do we want in exchange for that? We want our pound of flesh. We want to see the other party bleed, right? Like, and I don't know that it's any different now than it was 30, 50 years ago, right? I mean, I think to some degree now maybe those lines are blurred more than they ever have been in terms of where the fault lies. You know, that there's less faith in the institutions that for a long time kind of kept things not necessarily going in the right direction, but kind of keeping everything seeming like it was fine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think to some degree, like, this is our own personal reckoning with that, right? Like, us as a country realizing that we don't always make the right decisions, that the people that we've voted for and that we've put in office haven't always led us in the right direction. And how do we grapple with that, right? This critical race theory is, I think, in a lot of ways, like, part of the struggle with it is that some people believe it's a tool to try and divide us, right? I don't think that the truth should be looked at in that way. But, like, how can we approach this in a way? I mean, I'm going off the wrong track here. It's not about, like, how we make these people feel comfortable, but, you know, like, how do we get everybody? Maybe it's not about everybody. I don't know. I guess, like, that's where I run out of steam, is because I reach that point where I'm like, I see all these problems, but I am having a really hard time finding the solution right now.
Well, the first step in finding a solution is accepting the issue, right? I won't necessarily say problem. We are a divided country. When it comes to, and the reason why I've been struggling with the word accountability and holding somebody accountable, right? You can present the contract or the commitment to the person, and I guess in theory you could hold them accountable by doing that. And it's not, and I know that's semantics, but I struggle with the fact that maybe we have the wrong people driving the car in a lot of instances. Yeah. And I distill that down to the fact that, look, it's not about agreeing on how we get from point A to point B. It's about understanding that it's always going to be a choice between right and wrong. And I think our compass as a society, not just the states, we've lost what that looks like until tragedy or calamity hits our front door. And I think that's what we're like. And looking at the response to the floods in Germany, same thing. Like, we can deny climate change and put band-aids on the issue, but until we actually try to do the work of solving the problem, we're always going to have the same problems.
See, and that's at the same time I'm sitting here going, and part of humanity's society's issue is that they look at climate change as the problem, right? Like climate change is the enemy. It's not us creating climate change, but it's like, oh, this stupid planet won't just let us do whatever we want and dump our garbage in the ocean and pollute it, and it keeps fighting back. I can't believe it. How disrespectful and rude. Like, you're a guest in its house. Like, what are you doing?
It's not even that. It's like if you look at it in a more basic way, when you get a cold, your body's unhappy.
Right.
Your body's like, no, I'm not okay with
So
this.
what does it
Like,
do, right? It gets hot. You get a fever. It tries to kill off the bacteria or the virus or whatever it is that's causing the problem. What do you think the Earth is doing?
Well, scientifically, it's not getting hot because it wants to. It's because we keep doing stupid crap like not getting electric cars, not figuring out ways to. I saw this video and it makes me think of like two things. One, the fact that we've stopped focusing on critical thinking in general as a society. And secondly, that we don't think, because we haven't done that, we don't think about cause and effect. No. So I think the natural course is to have chaos. Like, the natural course is to be like, well, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it sure as hell did fall in a day. Mm-hmm. Like, to hear historians say it. England, the UK, was a great power at one point. It eventually isn't, right?
In the Han Dynasty, right? Like the largest empire ever amassed.
Yeah. You look at and you can look throughout history, not saying that our country's going to fall apart or society's going to fall apart. It's that once you start to accept or start to swim downstream with everybody else, when you know there's a cliff at the end, you're going to have chaos. And there are certain telltale signs, and you see it in business, like, hey, for whatever reason, we're month over month we're losing 12 to 15% in sales. Yep. Until you decide to explore as to why that is, the next month it'll be the same thing. And when you compound that, 18 months later, you're going to be out of business. So it's not complicated. It's just complex. And the complexity is only derived from the fact that people don't want to address issues. Like, the pain has got to be like excruciating for people to say, we need to do something different. Yeah. Like, we're not going to wait for the next calamity. We want to mitigate, because we can't pretend like it's not going to happen, but we should mitigate potential risk.
Yeah, but there seems to be very little interest in doing that. It's I think maybe it's more human nature to wait for something to happen and react to it. But I'm with you in that I'd like to see us change that, right? Like I'd like to see us be more proactive and figure out how we can look at these problems and what their root causes are and start actually applying solutions, as opposed to arguing over whether or not the problem exists when we see it very clearly in front of our face, and then denying whether or not we have anything to do with the cause of it.
Yeah, it's like stuff that I learned in like 4th, 5th grade in science class. Like, none of that stuff is, and I'm sure the solutions are complex. I wouldn't say they're complicated. It's just a matter of, look, at the sake of, a good example would be people that are pissed. Well, billionaires are going into space. And your solve was what? Yeah. Right? What was your solution? Like, what did you bring to the table there? I don't personally plan on going to space, but I am starting to wonder, maybe they know something we don't know. Like, I'm really starting to think like they know something.
My dad said that this morning when we were watching the Blue Origin, the Bezos flight, and he said, well, just think about what that money, all that money that he spent on this could have gone to do, all the families and people that could have helped. And I said, yeah, but the point is for all the rich people to get off of this planet so they don't have to deal with all us poor people anymore. Because that's what it seems like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson are all just like we're out of here. You guys are crazy. We're going to go start our own country over here, our own planet. Like,
what was that movie with Matt Damon?
Oh, The Martian?
No, Elysium or
Elysium, I think. Yeah.
Elysium, yeah. They lived in a space station.
Pop culture.
Man, we didn't talk about Black Widow.
We didn't talk about any pop culture stuff. Have you watched any of the Loki show?
Oh, I watched.
It's so good, so good. It's really so good. Fantastic.
You either have to like the story or be a comic book head to watch.
I loved it so much. There were so many little, and I'm not like a huge comic book nerd. Comic book fan. Like, I say nerd in like an endearing term. Like, I mean, I like comic books, but I do not consider myself like I'm not like I have to have every issue and I've read them all and stuff like that. I'm just very much more of a casual collector. But
that's fair.
I've been a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a while now, and have definitely expanded my knowledge of things since then. And so, it's just really great. I mean, just really well written, really good storylines, like good. Surprises, like it from start to finish, a really great 6 episodes. I was sad that it was only 6, but I'm glad that they had the story that they wanted to tell and they told it.
Yeah.
Like that, and obviously we've got another season that's coming up. And so many little Easter eggs, right? And that's what Marvel's gotten really good at this point. It's just like, we're going to tease you with all these little things.
Well, what's interesting is, like, I know all the naysayers are saying, well, how long can they keep this up? And it's not really good cinema because it's superheroes. Like, what they failed to realize, and we've said this before, and I know I'm a big, I really believe this. It's our mythos. We have nothing else. Like, comic books and superheroes, like, we did that.
It's no different, in that same, like, in terms of the types of characters and stuff like that, right? That we have seen from Greek and Roman mythology and so many other societies from history. And you're right, like we don't have that same type of mythos that we've built, and so instead, like, we have these characters, right? It's not that much different. It's just in a slightly different kind of vein in that I think in a lot of cases previously those characters were looked at as real, right? Or gods that existed and had influence over the world, whereas now we're like, okay, in this case we see these as superheroes that are strictly fictional characters, that we see elements of ourself, right, in these characters. We see their flaws, we see their strengths, and so we naturally gravitate towards them. And, like I don't know. The whole argument that just because it's a superhero movie, it's not good cinema, I think is crap. Like, define good cinema. You talk about the difference between right and wrong, and I just think that, like, cinema, like, that stuff is so subjective.
Yeah, like La La Land is not my thing. So when people say, "Have you seen La La Land?" I'm like, "No," and I probably never will. But I will watch
Black Widow.
Widow.
Which was good, like way better than I thought it was going to be.
I know, and I watched a lot of Everything Awesome and Cosmic Wonder. They do pretty good YouTube, like, clips of, I don't want to call them shows or episodes on the comic world, especially Marvel. And I actually disagreed with the guy that does I Am's Fires, I think that's his name. Because he got a preview because he gets so much, so many eyeballs in his channel. And I was like, no, I thought it was a fantastic movie. But I didn't need a backstory. Like, it wasn't like I was waiting for a backstory. Even the twist that they did with Taskmaster, I was like, that was pretty interesting. I like that. Because there's so much material, you can't cookie cut all of it. You have to make it to where you can continue the stories. So I thought it was a great movie. Scarlett Johansson is fantastic. I can't remember who played her sister in the movie, but she was fantastic.
Yeah, she was really good. David Harbour that played their dad.
Oh gosh,
he is fantastic. He's one of my favorite like character actors right now.
And I'm glad they didn't make the lady that played the mom like bad. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure where they were going with that at first, and I was with you that I was glad that it turned out that she was on the same page and everything, because it was like, really, that's shitty.
Yeah, because everybody that was like trying to predict the movie and the plot, I'm like, I hope that's not true. Like, she can't be Taskmaster, and I was so glad that she wasn't. So I've actually with Loki and Black Widow, it gave me a new level of confidence in what the MCU is going to be. And they're not trying to... They're trying to use the source material as much as possible, which I really respect and appreciate, but they're not trying to bastardize it. They're trying to make it fit into whatever mediums they're going to try to continue to make. So, pretty pleased. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, not...
You don't love her?
I don't dislike her. I just don't think she was probably the person I would have picked to play that role. Because it's kind of like the guy John Krasinski.
John Krasinski, yeah. You don't see her as anybody other than Elaine. Yeah.
I never watched Seinfeld. I just know that's the show she was on. I'm kind of like, it's Elaine. I just can't take that serious.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I think I struggle with that a little bit too with her, where it's just kind of like I don't really see her as like an MCU character, and more just as like her like her showing up, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's I'm willing to kind of see where they go with all of that stuff. You know, and how it kind of plays out.
Because you've only seen her for like
bits and pieces from
30,
Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then the scene from here and stuff. I did hear.
It's kind of like.
I was going to say that there was a. So this is spoilers for anybody that hasn't watched Black Widow. So stop listening because. Now, at the end of the movie, when Yelena goes to the graveyard and she whistles, they recorded. Yeah. There's a separate ending that they recorded or that they shot where somebody whistles back, and there's this whole theory that when Cap went back to return all of the stones, the Infinity Stones, that because the Soul Stone is a soul for a soul, that when he went back, he exchanged the Soul Stone for Natalie's soul. That he basically told Red Skull, soul for a soul. So if you want the Soul Stone back, but I don't get that because Red Skull would just be like, "F you, Cap. I don't care."
Yeah, I'm
like you want to put the stone back and save all the timelines. That's fine. Otherwise, get out of my face. So I don't necessarily buy that, but that's like supposedly one of the the fan theories out there in terms of how Nat may be coming back and all this stuff. And I don't know. I'm getting to the point where it's like. Even in Loki, right? Like he got disembodied, sent to the void, and it was like I knew in that moment, okay, well, obviously everybody that's happened to so far didn't actually die because Loki's not dead. Like they aren't going to end the show on that, and so it's like these and like all this stuff about
it was episode 5.
Yeah, but it's like all of the these deaths that don't end up being deaths, like that's starting to kind of build on me. And I think Marvel, maybe it's the comic book thing, right? Because they tend to do that a lot in comic books where it's like, it's almost like Dragon Ball where it's like, oh, we collected all the Dragon Balls. Everybody's back. Never mind. All the bad stuff that happened went away and it's only good stuff. Like,
but I think it makes sense in the MCU because, when you think about these characters eventually aging out, like I don't want to see somebody else play Tony Stark.
Sure.
Just I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
But isn't he supposedly coming back now? I heard rumors or something that he's supposed to be coming back as Tony Stark again. But
it doesn't matter. Like I think I'm starting to separate the MCU from the comics.
Sure.
Like in my mind.
I think you can do that.
Yeah. It's kind of hard because they've picked great actors and actresses. for example, Chris Evans, he's now, Iron Man.
You mean Captain America?
Captain America. But he was also Johnny Storm, which was kind of weird too. But you kind of forget that ever happened. So I'm not trying to. I don't want to become like a Star Wars fan where I start to eat, breathe, and sleep just
MCU.
All these fan theories.
Well, I'm with you on that. Like, it's not. I am not. Like.
I'm not crapping on Star
Wars. No.
Fans.
I want to like what I am not constant. Like, I'm not seeking out these like theories. I'm not like, what are these theories that everybody's interested in? But it was more like things that people have sent me, or like just videos that I've happened across on Instagram or YouTube and stuff like that. And so, but yeah, it's just like I'm very excited where Marvel's heading with this. I think like a couple of good more titles that they can add to their belt at this point. So I mean, really, like with Disney's money and everything behind them, it'd be hard for anybody to really. I mean, like, not that DC can't do its own thing. Like, I think they're doing fine. But
I'm going to say this, man. The difference between DC and, with the exception of Titans and Marvel, is that Marvel has a tendency to stay pretty close to the source material.
You think
and I think
DC,
that is the secret sauce.
DC varies too much, and that's where they lose it. Interesting.
Yeah, like the only movie they had that was could have been a winner that they, for whatever reason, got bad press. Well, I'd say 1 and 1A would be Batman versus Superman. Like, it wasn't necessarily a bad movie. And Justice League, they should have released a Snyder cut. And that would have given them a good foundation.
Was that Warner Brothers? Aren't they the ones that?
Yeah.
So, way to go, HBO.
So, so I think all in all, really pleased. Like, I thought Black Widow was a great movie, and it's long, but it was a really, really good movie. Loki was a great show. And again, Loki's not one of those characters like I really care about, but the show had me interested. I mean, I'm spoiled with like my favorites. 2 of them are behind me, and if I can find an X-Men print, that'll be up there soon. But yeah. We're super glad that you guys joined us, and I know this has been a long one, but
it's also been a long time coming. So,
yeah. So hopefully we get back. Actually,
there's no hope. This is the week that we get back on track.
Yeah, hope is not a strategy. So we'll get everything. We're probably just going to publish everything in a blob, and just play catch up from there. Like, yeah, you got it. So we'll figure it out. But, dude, it's good talking to you. I definitely needed this because, like, and we talked a few episodes about mental health, and part of it is, like, give me your brain a chance to just get the stuff out and think about some things. And
see all that crazy shit that's been rattling around inside your head for weeks.
Well, I don't think my comments, reviews on Jake Tapper are crazy.
No, I didn't say everything, but some of the stuff you said was pretty crazy, okay? Like, just give me this one. And
again, I think it's about the dialogue. So, and I'm not calling out these personalities because I'm a hater. I'm saying it because, like, who's going to give me honest feedback?
Well, yeah.
Like, I don't... Like, my feet, like, I was never a Jake Tapper fan, ever. I started watching him more during the pandemic. But I've noticed a slight pivot in how he covers things. And it's just kind of like, is that where you're at?
I'm with you. And, like, I never subscribed to Jake Tapper, like, regularly. I didn't tune in to watch his shows. I caught bits and pieces here and there during the pandemic stuff. Right. But shortly thereafter, I just kind of tuned him back out, really. Like, I just kind of was like, But, I mean, I'm not a huge news guy as it is. I've cut back significantly this year. Just trying to kind of, like, while still, like, remaining informed, but not drowning myself in it, but it's really hard.
Yeah, Google News has turned into a clickbait news feed for me, and I'm
New
struggling.
York Times.
I cut them off a long time ago. They're dead to me. And I hate to say that, but their Murdoch was starting the show. So, but anyway, we're super glad you joined us. We will get back on track, and check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other things. Yeah. As always, I'm Andre.
And I'm Chris.
We'll talk to you next time.